around them. But from a journalist's viewpoint, Jackie thought that this could be a great story. She could picture the headline now. Sydney couple flee haunted house. Gold, she thought. On the night of the investigation, Jackie and her photographer were expected to meet the Warrens at the Gerrard Street house at 8:30 p.m. But she had decided to go a little earlier to scope out the street, chat to the neighbours, and find out a little more about the alleged haunted house. 8:30 on the dot, Ed and Lorraine arrived, with a film crew from the Don Lane show accompanying them. There were the sounds of dogs barking in the distance as streetlights flickered overhead. Ed and Lorraine introduced themselves to Jackie, although she knew exactly who they were. Jackie was very quick to ensure that Ed and Lorraine knew that she was very sceptical of the whole situation. And the Warrens respected that. If anything, they chuckled at the idea of a challenge, to make Jackie a believer by the end of the night. As Ed, Lorraine, Jackie and the crews that they had brought walked up the brick steps to the front door, they were all very unaware of what was waiting for them on the other side. Wendy and Athol answered the front door, both looking terrified, but also slightly embarrassed. They weren't sure if they were going to be believed or painted out to be lunatics. But as Lorraine stepped into the house, she was hit with something. A strong force. A vision so strong that it threw her off balance. It felt like a pressure pushing down on her entire body, making her feel really dizzy. Ed took his wife's hand in his, making sure that she was okay. She put on a smile and followed Ed inside. There was definitely something in the house. Something very evil was lurking. But Lorraine didn't want to announce it. Not yet. The investigation began almost immediately. Ed and the film crew from the Don Lane show were accompanied by Wendy and Athol as they wandered through the house. Lorraine, Jackie and her photographer made themselves known in the front bedroom of the house. Lorraine sat on the bed as Jackie watched. The photographer took a few photos of the room itself and of Lorraine. Lorraine closed her eyes and laid back in the bed. Jackie scribbled a few notes on a small pocket notebook that she pulled from her bag. "There is something here," Lorraine said. Jackie, still sceptical, watched closely. Her eyes were fixed on Lorraine as her face began to sort of change, morph. Jackie gasped as Lorraine's face began to morph into something very different. It was as if a completely different person was now sitting on that bed. Lorraine was no longer there. She'd now become an old, vile-looking woman. Mrs. Warren?" "Yes, dear." Are you okay?" Lorraine's eyes shot open. They too were different. Like black marbles with red lining. Jackie turned to her photographer. "Get a photo, quickly, come on." But as she turned back to Lorraine, the old woman was gone. Lorraine's face was back. It was as if nothing had happened to her. "What did you see, dear?" Well, I don't really know. Explain it to me." And so, Jackie did. And Lorraine believed every single word. At the other end of the house, the investigation for Ed was proving to be beneficial. "In the name of Jesus Christ, if there are unnatural beings in this dwelling, I command thee to show thyself." As Ed shouted those words, a door slammed behind them in the living room, narrowly missing Wendy and the film crew capturing the moment it happened. As Ed stared at the door, hoping for more activity, a small silver cigarette box lifted from the fireplace. Everyone watched as it floated through the air, before picking up its pace and hitting one of the film crew in the back of the head. Ed had no doubt in his mind that the house on Gerrard Street was being plagued by a demonic force. Jackie, despite what she had seen in the front bedroom, was still not convinced. She thought that the Warrens were simply trying to get a good segment for the Don Lane show. But as Lorraine moved from room to room, Jackie following her, scribbling notes down in her notebook, she felt a dark energy in almost every single room of the house. Without a doubt, there was something here, and whatever it was, did not like that Ed and Lorraine were getting involved. After an hour, the group met in the kitchen. Ed and Lorraine sat opposite Wendy and Athol at the kitchen table, with the film crew recording everything. So, Lorraine and I both believe that there is definitely something in your home. In almost every single room, I felt a truly dark energy, Lorraine added. Wendy began to cry, and Athol held his wife in his arms. But Lorraine continued. There is something very, very bad here. Whatever is here has tried to possess Alec years ago, and it's also attempted to possess you, Athol. This isn't good, okay? What if we stay? If you choose to stay, I think that things are going to get worse, much worse. You won't be safe here. This is not something that you can get rid of so easily. If you stay, it is inevitable that there is going to be a tragedy. Jackie stood a few feet away from the Warrens, leaning up against the kitchen cupboard and rolling her eyes. She didn't believe a word of this. Can you not, do like an exorcism or something? Ed shook his head. No. We don't just go around performing exorcisms. You have to get the church involved, and it's a very long and timely process. What Lorraine saw was truly evil, and in a case such as this, it's very, very unlikely that an exorcism will get rid of the entity so easily. I honestly just thought that you guys would, come in, find whatever was causing the problem, and, get rid of it, I guess. I'm sorry, it's really not that easy for Lorraine and I to just come in and do that. What do you expect we do then? Lorraine took Wendy's hand and held it tight. I think you both need to leave before it's too late. Take your things, take your children, anything you can get, and just get out. And that is exactly what Wendy and Athol Evans did. As the investigation came to an end and everyone started to leave, Wendy and her husband left as well. And that was the last night that they would ever spend in the house on Gerrard Street. The investigation premiered on the Don Lane Show the following night, watched by millions of households across Australia. Jackie Thompson's story in the newspaper the next day was the highest selling edition of 1980, Family Flee Ghost House. Her article in the paper drove a lot of interest into the house on Gerrard Street, with many people wanting to see the haunted house. The Evans family left their home on the same night that the Warrens investigated, and they never returned. As for the house itself, whether the evil that Lorraine Warren felt is still there remains a mystery, but despite Lorraine's claim that the house was uninhabitable, another family moved in just a few years later. Whether they experienced the evil in the home on Gerrard Street is unknown, but one thing is for sure: the devil exists down under. So that is the story of the Warrens investigation here in Australia. Now, the footage that aired on the Don Lane Show, I have searched for everywhere. I've searched for the episode in which the Warrens were interviewed on, and I can't find it. It drives me nuts. But as I said earlier in the episode, this was a story of the Warrens in Australia that I had been wanting to kind of discover for years, and I could never really find anything out. So yeah, the book that I mentioned is such a brilliant book. So I'm sure you'll be able to buy it if you're not in Australia. But definitely give it a read. It's got some great ghost stories, some great Australian ghost stories. But if you enjoyed this case file, make sure that you follow wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, Podbean or Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to follow the Warren Files on Instagram. I'll be posting some behind the scenes bits and pieces about the podcast, some general posts about Ed and Lorraine and their investigations, and I'll be posting a lot more, especially as the new Conjuring film comes out in a few months. For next week's case file, we are heading back to America as the Warrens investigate a ghost story that is very, very military orientated. That is the only hint I'll give you. But I'm Liam and you've been listening to the Warren Files.
Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren.
Devils do exist. Demons do exist.
I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
Comely Podcasts presents The Warren Files. You are listening to a Comely Podcast. Some of the names of the people and the places that are featured in this case file have been changed to protect the privacy of the people involved. Cadet Joseph Moore had turned in for the night. The moonlight peeked through the windows above his bed, basking the room in a golden ambience. His eyes flicked around the room, adjusting to the darkness. His mind wouldn't shut off, as he was struggling to fall asleep, as tired as he was. He kept thinking of the stories that some of his fellow cadets had shared with him, as much as he tried not to think about it. The spooky stories. The stories about the ghosts of West Point. Not that he believed in ghosts. He certainly didn't believe, but the stories were still enough to send a shiver down your spine. After all, this place was slightly creepy after dark, and it was old, really old. If there were ever such thing as ghosts, surely West Point Academy would have them. But Joseph didn't believe in ghosts. He chuckled to himself and shuffled around in his bed, trying to make himself a little more comfortable. And as he pulled his blankets up over his shoulders, that's when he felt it. Two hands towards the bottom of the bed, one on either side of his legs, as if someone was tucking him in for a good night's rest. Ugh, go away, Joseph thought to himself, thinking it was just one of his fellow cadets trying to play a prank on him. But as he opened his eyes, prepared for a showdown, he froze, looking up at something. Joseph began to tremble as he couldn't take his eyes off of it. A white figure, a woman, in what looked like a colonial-aged outfit. She stared down at Joseph. He stared up from his bed, unable to speak. The woman smiled with a slightly sinister grin and pressed her finger to her lips. If there were ever such things as ghosts, surely West Point Academy would have them. And now, Cadet Joseph Moore, he knew for sure. The United States Military Academy, West Point. With such a long history, this extraordinary place was surely home to something far beyond our understanding. And as the Warrens arrive, they discover a ghost story that not only terrifies the students of West Point, but the highest ranks of the military too.
Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren.
Devils do exist. Demons do exist.
I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
Comely Podcasts presents The Warren Files. Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to The Warren Files. This is the podcast that focuses on the darker stories from deep within the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. This week we are diving into a good old-fashioned ghost story from 1972. Now this is a story of Ed and Lorraine's visit to the United States Military Academy, also known as West Point, located in West Point, New York. Now for this story, I had to do a fair amount of research, just because I'd never heard of West Point before, let alone knew about the academy or what it was known for. But from what I've found, this place is pretty impressive. I'll give you a bit of history if you're like me and you don't know. West Point was founded in 1802 by the president at the time, Thomas Jefferson. Some of the graduates of West Point include Confederate General Stonewall Jackson and Dwight David Eisenhower, who was the 34th President of the United States. But yeah, like I said, I did a lot of research because I didn't know about this place. Nevertheless, West Point has been around for a while, and after doing my research, there are a few different ghost stories. For Ed and Lorraine, however, they discovered that for themselves when they went to visit West Point to lecture there. And so for this case, this is the story of the ghosts of West Point Academy. Lorraine Warren stood at her living room window, eyes fixed on the street outside her house. She was waiting for a car to take both her and Ed to the United States Military Academy, West Point. Ed was in his office, rushing around packing all sorts of bits and pieces to take with them. Documents from previous cases, photos that showed evidence of paranormal entities. The Warrens had been invited by staff and students of West Point to come and speak about their research into supernatural phenomena. They were flattered, they were honoured, the chance to go to West Point of all places. Ed had served in the United States Navy during World War II, so to go to West Point felt like a privilege to him. The Warrens had been scheduled in and were told that a car would arrive to pick them up early on the day of. Lorraine checked the time. It had just turned 8 a.m, and as a car pulled up along the street outside her home, Lorraine smiled to herself. Ed, car's here. Whoa, that's no car. That's one hell of a limo. Good morning, sir. Ma'am. A tall, clean-cut, rather impressive-looking gentleman stood beside the limo, dressed in a military uniform. He saluted to both Ed and Lorraine as they approached the car. Good morning. How are you? Lorraine replied. Fine, thank you, ma'am. He opened the door for the Warrens. Ed smiled, slightly stunned at the royal treatment they were receiving. The limo looked so out of place on the Warren street, but ultimately, they loved it. The man climbed into the front seat. Ready to go? Let's do it, Ed replied. The journey to West Point was like a picturesque portrait. Hills of green, valleys full of tall trees that looked like something out of a storybook. It was incredible. Lorraine couldn't take her eyes off of the scenery. It was simply beautiful. The entire journey, the driver spoke only if spoken to, his hands firmly planted on the steering wheel, and his eyes fixed forward for the entire drive. The Warrens were impressed, utterly impressed, by his military bearing. Obviously, West Point trained them well. As the limousine rolled over a hill, the Warrens got their first look at West Point. Is that it? That's West Point. Nestled beside the Hudson River, the academy looked breathtaking. As they drove through a set of beautiful steel gates onto the grounds of the academy, American flags fluttered in the wind. The Warrens noticed cadets marching through the courtyards in perfect formation. The historic buildings towered over them. It was nothing but patriotically astonishing. As the limousine pulled up in front of one of the large buildings, a man stood to attention beside the entrance. 2 cadets on either side of him. The driver hurried out of the vehicle, opening the door for Ed and Lorraine. Thank you, they both said. Mr. and Mrs. Warren, welcome to West Point. My name is Major Ron Price. Major Price exchanged pleasantries with the Warrens as they introduced themselves. If you'd like to follow me, I thought that we could start by a tour of the academy, Major Price said. That sounds wonderful. Lead the way, Ed replied. The Warrens were shown through a few buildings representing the history of West Point, with Major Price supplying more than enough information for Ed and Lorraine to both feel so privileged to get the opportunity. Throughout the tour, Major Price showed an interest in the Warrens' work, asking them questions about their most recent and most popular cases. The tour continued through training halls to housing quarters. Mr. and Mrs. Warren, I would like to finish off the tour by showing you Superintendent Francis Dunbar's residence. The residence was once home to Colonel Sylvanus Thayer, who was the superintendent of the academy from 1817 to 1833. Sounds great. Lead the way. The superintendent's residence was a large white federal-style brick home. From the outside, it looked charming, beautiful even. But as Major Price opened the door and led the way in, Lorraine began to feel something. Visions began to appear in her mind. Visions of screaming spirits, troubled spirits. There was something in the house, and it genuinely scared Lorraine. Many people don't really like coming into the Thayer house, Major Price said. Why not? Ed asked. Lorraine stood silently, her eyes shifting around the interior of the home. There have been quite a few instances of strange activity here, sir. Like what? Well, there have been reports of beds being stripped after just being made, odd noises during the night. Major Price looked at Lorraine, who couldn't quite keep still. Mrs. Warren, are you alright? Lorraine simply nodded. Allow me to show you both something. Mr. and Mrs. Warren, follow me. Major Price led them into the kitchen of the home. It was neat. It was beautiful. It was unusually cold. Major Price pointed to a breadboard that had sat atop the kitchen bench. What exactly are we looking at here, Major? This board is stained from something. Major Price pointed to a wet spot on the board, roughly the size of a slice of bread. The superintendent reports that no matter how many times they clean this board, no matter how many times they dry it, the spot upon it remains. Really? Yes, sir. It's been so for
Now turn right.
months now. Lorraine was still quiet. She was drawn to the corner of the kitchen.
In 500 feet turn right onto Hawkinsville Road.
You okay? Lorraine simply nodded. There's something in this house, Ed. What is it? I don't know.
Now turn right.
But there's something here. She's right, sir. The superintendent, General Dunbar, he and his wife have said that they've seen things. What kind of things, Major? People with clear, see-through bodies. Apparitions. Have you seen anything? No, sir. But the General and his wife have said that their belongings have been put elsewhere in the house, clothes thrown from hangers in the wardrobe, slamming doors and noises in the walls. Major. Yes, ma'am. I need to see upstairs. Lorraine stood in the middle of one of the upstairs rooms. She had requested to go upstairs alone. She didn't want any distractions as she tried to connect with any spirits that may be lingering around the superintendent's home. In the rooms upstairs, Lorraine attempted to communicate with the spirits. The first 3 rooms she entered, there was nothing. No response whatsoever. She couldn't hear anything. She couldn't feel anything. She couldn't sense anything. Lorraine wandered through the hallway, towards the final upstairs room that she was yet to attempt contacting. As she entered, the room was unusually cold. Despite the sun glaring through the window, the room itself was ice cold. In the room, there was a large wooden bed surrounded by a wardrobe, a bookshelf, and a rocking chair beside the window that looked out at West Point Academy. Lorraine sat down in the rocking chair, and she looked out at the yard below. As she sat down, her heart began to race, unusually fast. Lorraine placed her arms in her lap. She could feel someone or something poking her in her left arm, poking her rather sharply. Lorraine looked up beside her to see a man standing there. His hand reached out towards her arm. As her eyes adjusted, Lorraine began to recognize the man's face. Shocked, Lorraine noticed a cleaner scurry past the room outside the door. "Excuse me?" The woman turned around and poked her head into the room. "Yes, ma'am." Would you happen to know if President Kennedy was ever in this room? President Kennedy? Yes, President John F. Kennedy. Oh, why yes, ma'am. This was the room he usually stayed in whenever he came to visit West Point. As Lorraine looked up at the man again, it became clear. She was staring up at the ghost of President John F. Kennedy. A tear rolled down Lorraine's face. She was unsure why she was crying, and yet an extreme sense of sadness had hit her. She stood up and hurried back out into the hallway. Lorraine wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Her back against the wall, she felt as if she was being watched. She could feel eyes on her as a feeling of nervousness rushed over her. Lorraine looked down the hallway. At the very end, beside the top of the stairs, a woman stood staring at her. An angry, bitter-looking woman. She stared at Lorraine and simply shook her head before disappearing completely. Whoever this woman seemed to be, Lorraine had a very odd feeling about her. The master bedroom of the superintendent's home was a large room that looked so tidy as if it had never been slept in or used, like a room in a museum. Whilst being the bedroom of General Dunbar and his wife, the room also held a collection of exquisite fine china and statues that dated back to the Revolutionary War. Lorraine wandered around the room, this time joined by Ed, Major Price, and Major Price's assistant, Andrea. "Do you mind?" Lorraine asked, before touching some of the fine china. "Oh, by all means, go ahead, ma'am." Lorraine placed her hands on some of the
In a quarter of a mile, use the left lane and turn left onto Allen Road. Now turn left. Railroad crossing ahead.
Road.
Don't come
3/4 of a mile, keep right towards Macon. Now keep right. In 3/4 of a mile, keep left to join the Interstate 475 north towards Atlanta.
Smoking cigarettes in the back of your house. I watch the liquor spill and drip from your mouth. You said you're holding on to old men,
Now keep left to join the highway.
moving on to all of your dreams. But it wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst. When I feel you again, I wanna know the worst. To tell you the truth, I'm not the person you knew. But it wasn't
Route recalculated.
the worst. When I feel you again, I wanna know the worst. But to tell you the truth, I'm not the person you knew. Cut it off to pieces of me. Cast away with the shame when your arms over me. You feel complete.
Follow Interstate 75 north for 60 miles. 20 miles.
I find it hard to be myself.